Oh, lovely.
Lovely jubbly.
Good morning.
5 p.m. Yeah.
How are you? Spoiler, guys, we're 42 minutes into this recording and we're just starting the official episode. How are you, mate?
His question.
I didn't ask to begin with, did I? And because I don't care.
Exactly. So don't do it for the listeners.
You love training. That's probably why you're here. Whether that's lifting weights, running, or practicing a sport. We love coaching those things. That's what we do. And we're here to talk about how you can do those things better and wade through the chaos of information out there on the rest of the internet. I'm Tom. The other guy is Dr. Knuckles. And no, we're not sat in the same room because we're not in the same country. I'm here in rainy South Wales, and Dr. Knuckles is in Bangalore in the exotic subcontinent of India. Welcome to the Un-Trainables. Train today?
Actually, I was going to tell you this earlier before we started recording. So I had to do a little bit of, I don't know why I do this, but a little bit of fuck around and find out. I had weighted pull ups in the program today, and for some reason, I decided, you know what? I've never tried weighted one arm pull ups. And,
Oh, come on.
and I tried to use the same weight from that set, my working set of like proper pull ups. And then now my left elbow is like,
For a really smart guy, you're a fucking idiot.
a bit of excitement in my.
I've never seen you ever do weighted pull-ups.
I've been doing it's been in my Saturday program or my Saturday session for the last like 4 or 5 months.
I don't watch your
I
content.
know you don't.
What kind of weight are you using?
Uh,
Obviously, you weigh 40, 45 kilos.
I think I've been on what 40, 40 or 35 last time.
I'll shut up. Yeah,
Yeah, it was 30
it's very
today. I
respectable.
was 30, but then it's not really a pull up if people get into the nitty gritty of it. Becomes a chin up, doesn't it?
Are you underhand?
Yeah.
It doesn't count.
Nah. It's like, is it the sumo version of a deadlift? The
Yes,
sumo
I think that's
equivalent.
right. So you tried a single arm
Yeah, I tried the
chin up
single arm chin up,
with
and then
just
the
30
moment I
kilos strapped to you.
started to pull, I just felt a twinge in the elbow, and then I'm done.
Have you done a single arm chin up without
No,
weight? Talking talking of morons doing stupid shit in the gym, I think what we wanted to talk about today was some of the more popular training methods out there that people use to, air quotes, mix it up in the gym and I suppose surprise their muscles into spontaneous growth. And basically whether we think that average Joe in the gym should be trying out these training methods or whether we should be completely flat out ignoring them. So I think what we're going to do, Knuckles, jump in if you want to do something different,
no.
but is try and list a whole bunch of different training methods that people might apply within their strength training in the gym and kind of try and put them into two piles for everyone. One pile being potentially useful or worth looking at, worth including for a bit, and the other pile being get in the goddamn bin, you waste of time.
Sounds
Yeah?
good. Yeah, yeah. We might be,
What's
we
your
might seem a little biased, but that's only because I think a lot of options that we've lifted are things we've tried before we
yeah.
actually went into the research side of things. Things we tried when we started off our journeys in fitness. So a little biased based on experience, and then we're just lucky that the research happened to agree with us.
Yeah. How long have you been training? A
Almost 15 years
long
now.
time. 15
15
years. Yeah.
years.
I think I'm like 13, 14 years of training. So like, and that was obviously before I became a fitness professional of any kind. And yeah, I was trying all sorts of stuff. I was on T Nation, whatever those magazines used to be called, Men's Health and all that, trying all sorts of jazz. So yeah, I've tried it all and then researched it all in two complete different phases of my life. And yeah, so I think we got a bit of a unique perspective on this
Yeah.
because he probably used to love all this stuff.
Oh, I mean, like the first one we got on our list is drop sets, and if you're if you're biased towards just getting an absolute pump, sometimes drop sets give you that, don't they?
Yeah, I never had a never had a pump like it. If you get a mate on the end of your easy bar when you're ripping preacher curls, and you take 10 kilos off after 10 reps or something, do 10 more reps. My God, the pain. And you like, it's a bit cliche, but people say no pain, no gain quite a lot. And it almost turned into a justification for doing stupid methods like that.
But
Because
for the listener,
it's
oh
hurting.
yeah,
It must be working.
for the listener who doesn't know what a drop set is, can you give them an example?
Yeah, well, that's one example. Like a standard drop set would be entering a set at a given weight of any movement, but then once you kind of approach failure, I suppose, and you're at a point where you would either not be able to do any more reps or you wouldn't be able to do many more reps. You would stop. You would take a bit of weight off, so move the pin on the lat pull down or take a few plates off the barbell, whatever, and then you would continue to lift at a lighter load. The goal being just to sort of add reps. And you might do that once. You might have like a two-tiered drop set where you'd stop again and remove more weight, and you'd end up doing 30 reps odd total. So that's the main version that people use. The other one is a mechanical drop set where you would make the movement easier in some way, which is it's slightly more difficult to think about, but you'd change the mechanics of the movement. So you might let's do lateral raises, like dumbbell lateral raises. You might do a normal set with your arms like almost straight, elbows locked at only a couple of degrees bent. And then when you start to struggle, you might like do a really bent arm lateral raise just to bring the weight a little bit closer to the pivot point and bring the forces a little bit lower. Does that make sense? Is that what you'd say a mechanical drop set is?
I've never used a
Never
mechanical
heard of it.
drop set before now.
Oh, see, at the start of this episode, you seem like a liar now because we said we've tried all these methods
Yeah,
and you haven't done a mechanical drop
man.
set.
Because to me, I was just thinking when you mentioned mechanical drop set, I was going to say like, are you going to refer to previous definition of drop set being like momentary failure and mechanical drop set being when there's a breakdown in technique, you drop the weight and then you work on it.
Yeah, I suppose that would make sense. That's not my understanding of what a mechanical drop set is. I don't think there's a limit to how you change the movement to make it easier. Like you could add some accommodating resistance. You could, I suppose that would actually be a normal drop set because you're reducing the load. But it could be like you were squatting and then you changed the range of motion to half squats. I would say that probably classifies as a mechanical drop set. But anyway, do you like them? Do you love a drop set? I think I've already called them stupid a few times, but
If the sole purpose of it is I'm in the gym with the lads, I'm just in here to train, have a bit of fun, get a pump on and leave, I don't mind it. Beyond that, I honestly don't think there's any like added benefit to doing them. We know for a fact that um, they're not going to do that much for strength just because you're working to failure and the amount of fatigue you accumulate.
and you're reducing the load
Yeah,
by definition.
exactly.
And for strength gains, you need high loads.
So there's a lot of accumulated fatigue. You're actually dropping the load, and then from a hypertrophy perspective, the only thing it really gives you is a little more added volume. Beyond that, I don't. From a coach's perspective, I just don't see the point of them on the bump.
Yeah, I think like if you see someone doing them in the gym, it's going to be group of lads, like I described around the easy bar curls. You can guarantee what their goal is. Like you don't have to ask them. Their goal is muscle growth. So the question becomes: is as you approach failure on that first segment of the set where you've got the top weight on, as you're getting to within 2 reps of failure, and you start to take the weight off, is adding that second segment and the third one at a lighter load going to improve the hypertrophy that you get? Is it going to improve the adaptations you get out of these sets? And I think the answer is no, it's not. But what it is going to add is extra fatigue. It's going to be extra reps and damage and things for you to recover from. So you get the same amount of gains, but it'll take you twice as long, let's say, to recover from each set. And I don't think that's productive.
I put drop sets into overrated.
Overrated. The pile is actually called get in the bin.
Get in the bin then.
Get in the bin. Is there a population you think they'd be useful for?
If
There's some kind of rehab protocol that might employ them.
I think the next bit in our list would probably be more suited for rehab. This one, maybe if we're trying to get someone to feel what failure is like, potentially. But even then, the problem with drop sets is that you get a lot of the burn, that metabolite accumulation. So a lot of times you're not actually reaching failure. It's just that the burn becomes so unbearable. You stop the set.
There are people that would claim that that accumulation of metabolites would contribute to hypertrophy. What is your message to those people?
I mean, like anything with anything science based, there is might. It's a very strong uppercase, underline, bold, italic, everything might. Metabolite accumulation and mechanical tension happen together. So it's difficult to isolate it and say that metabolite accumulation is driving the hypertrophy, but we know for a fact now that mechanical tension is driving hypertrophy. So until you can actually isolate that metabolite accumulation and examine its effects on hypertrophy, you can't confidently say that it does drive it. And there is research that's looked at, I know we said we won't discuss research, but I'll make it short. But there is a study that's looked at rep schemes where they use heavy loads which don't cause metabolite accumulation and light loads to failure which do cause metabolite accumulation. And the hypertrophy is just like there's no difference between any of them. So it's not that you need the metabolite accumulation to get the growth.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you're right. Let's not go too deep into the weeds on that one. Sorry to interrupt. Let me just take 20 seconds to say thank you for joining us here on the Un-Trainables. We talk about all things lifting and fitness, so if you're remotely interested in those things, you're going to be very happy here. If you do like what we talk about, you will love our program, Un-Trainable. You get quality programming written by two world-class coaches, as well as access to me and Dr. Knuckles to ask any questions for less than £1 a day. There's a link down below if you want to find out more about it.
When you asked about rehab, so the next bit we've got on our list is BFR.
Yeah, BFR, blood flow restriction, which sounds just gross. To someone who doesn't know what that is, blood flow restriction training, you've done it. I haven't done it. I've always looked at it and thought that just doesn't seem like the juice is worth the squeeze on that one. Although I'm very aware of its potential use in rehabilitation situations. You've used it. What is it? Why did you use it?
I wouldn't really say that I've used it because the way I used it is not how BFR is typically prescribed. So usually it's prescribed based on a certain pressure that you apply, which causes a degree of occlusion. I just bought these cheap Velcro bands on Amazon, and I would just tighten it up, and I would judge the degree of occlusion on whether or not my hands would go numb. So I definitely wasn't using it the way it's meant to be used or the way it's prescribed. You do get a
Once
massive
again,
bump from it. Oh no,
for a scientist,
I'm a prime example
you,
of like I live the fuck around and find out lifestyle. I know not very exciting,
yeah,
but when it comes to training,
I
I
respect
do
that.
fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
And
You come on here and you just natter on about research,
uh,
and then in your own training, you just,
I
I
mean,
wonder if I can
and
do a
I've
single arm chin up with 30
and I've,
kilos with Velcro wrapped around my biceps.
the number of times I've found out.
Yeah. Yeah. You're falling to bits.
Uh, but yeah, so I liked it, and again, it goes back to every time I used it was with a lad session and you're doing bicep curls, so it gives you a massive, massive bump. But what you touched upon from a rehab perspective, there is some research to surround it. It's not something magical or life changing or whatever. It's just said in the early stages of rehab, for example, post an ACL reconstruction, where someone can't tolerate high loads, the BFR is quite useful there because you can use loads of up to, I think it's maybe 25-30% off your 1 RM and still get like quite good strength improvements. It can also get you quite a bit of
Oh, wow.
hypertrophy. I know there is a bit of research out there, floating out there, which is looked at even if you use a BFR band on a bike, like concept tour or whatever, that can help not so much stimulate hypertrophy, but almost reduce atrophy post surgery. So there is some evidence to say that it might work, but it's again like it's not something that's
So,
life changing.
So what's happening in the muscle that causes those things? Like obviously it's blood flow restriction training. It's presumably it is stopping the usual amount of blood arriving at the muscle and supplying oxygen and things like that. Why do you know?
So
Does that result in strength gains with such low loads and hypertrophy without the mechanical tension that you'd experience normally?
so I haven't looked into the specific mechanisms which drive it, but I know it has something to do with creating a hypoxic environment, which tends to then, I don't want to say drives muscle damage, but then it almost signals those anabolic pathways. But again, I haven't looked into the nitty gritty of the mechanisms because
Yeah,
I don't think there's enough evidence for me to have to look into using it and prescribing it for any of my demographic.
fair enough. Yeah, it sounds like very applicable for injured or like post-op populations. And it sounds like for normies, for people under normal circumstances, just training, you could do it if you wanted to, and you could get some results with lighter loads. But why wouldn't you just lift the heavier loads? I I have distinct memories of you squealing like a scalded pig during sets of bicep curls because you were in quite a bit of pain whilst using BFR. Tell me about that. And did that make you want to not use it again? Would that make you not recommend it to a friend?
So I think that bit of me squealing in pain is probably more down to the fact that I wasn't doing it the way it's meant to be done. Um,
Yeah,
it's
that's a fair
it's it's
point.
most definitely that because I do know a few people who have used it, but so I have this one friend who's got this very fancy BFR band. So it's a Bluetooth band, so he puts it on, and then on his phone he can type the degree of occlusion that he wants, and the
Pressures.
band inflates that pressure. So it's very
Wow.
fancy. And I've spoken to him because he's worked on rehab for a few bits using the BFR, and he's never really complained of massive discomfort. So I think it's fine. Like, but yeah, again, it's just knowing that it's very useful or quite useful in early stages of rehab. Beyond that, the benefits that you get from actually loading, I don't think you can compare.
Yeah, yeah, that would align with my bias as well. So let's leave that one there.
Pre-exhaustion.
Pre-exhaustion. It is something I see talked about quite often, which is why I think we wanted it in this list. Every now and again, like a PT will put up a post about advanced training method number 53, try pre-exhaustion, which, do you want to explain that?
So usually pre-exhaustion. I was going to ask you if there's a specific type of PT who usually pushes it, but we've seen it quite a bit in PTs who are obsessed with hypertrophy. I don't want to say PTs are obsessed with hypertrophy, just individuals obsessed with hypertrophy. This concept of pre-exhaustion, which is basically if you're going to be doing a movement with the intention of biasing a specific muscle group, they would usually recommend that you go onto a machine where you can isolate that muscle group and you do a couple of sets to almost pre-exhaust it before you go into your main exercise. And now that it's pre-exhausted, somehow there's this idea that it'll stimulate more muscle growth.
Can you give an example?
Say you're working on the leg press and you do some pre-exhaustion sets on a leg extension and then you go on the leg press. So the idea is that then you don't have to hit a very heavy load on the leg press to drive or to get muscle hypertrophy. Another example of pre-exhaustion is almost when they're going to be doing a compound movement, but they're trying to reduce the contribution of specific muscles. So popular one is almost pre-exhausting the triceps by isolating them with a specific exercise, and then going on to the bench press. The idea being that with the triceps now tired or fatigued, the chest will actually contribute more to the movement.
Yeah. And is it worth
I
it?
don't think it's worth it. There's a lot of reasons why I don't think it's worth it. If you want to use a leg extension to drive muscle hypertrophy, just use the leg extension. If you want to use a leg press to drive muscle hypertrophy, just use the leg press. I don't see the point of using one to fatigue the muscle and then going on to a main set. If this is your main set or your main exercise, just load it up and push as hard as you can.
Yeah, I think we're going to get into a bit of a common theme here because a lot of these, like air quotes, advanced training methods, they seem to be all trying to reduce the amount of load that you're able to lift. And I don't understand that. It doesn't compute in my brain. Why are we always trying to reduce the amount of load? I think people talk about injury risk a little bit, but like the gym is one of the safest places that you can perform any physical activity. The injury rate in there is so much lower than almost any sport out there. You will never move in a more controlled scenario. Like, majority of people like machines, and you are just locked in. Like the moving parts have a specific trajectory. Everything's under control. Hopefully, you're using an appropriate load for an appropriate number of reps.
but that's what it all comes down to, isn't it? Like lifting heavy isn't using excessively high loads. You should know. So like if we say okay, lift at 85% of your 1 RM, that's 85% of your 1 RM. So 85% of what Tom
Yeah,
can do is going to be much more than 85% of what I can do. When I probably get hurt is if I try to do what he does without actually gradually building up to that load so that I can tolerate it and then do it. Otherwise, the very simple fact is that we adapt to stress. So,
yeah.
too little stress, you atrophy and get weak. Stress in the maintenance range, you don't see any change. Stress above maintenance range, you get stronger, you see hypertrophy, you have an increased tolerance. And excessively high stress, you get hurt.
Yeah, over a long period of time, excessively high stress over a long period of time.
And the stress is just load. Like when we say stress, it's physical stress. And we're prescribing this physical stress through load, volume, frequency. So if you're doing ridiculously high volume with light load, you can still get hurt because the amount of physical stress that you're applying over a period of time is really high and your body's probably not recovering. So it's all about managing that physical stress, managing that load, managing that volume, and just being sensible with the overall prescription.
Yeah, it's probably worth saying that that amount of stress, that kind of bit well above maintenance and a little bit beyond what you need to grow, it's only too much when it cannot be balanced by the amount of recovery that you can get into your week, the amount of work you can recover from. Basically, once the scales tip more towards stress, you start risking injury and other nasty symptoms.
And we will, in another episode, touch upon things you can
I
do
think
for
it's worth it.
recovery and like practices, whether it's in terms of programming and then things outside the gym that you can do for recovery, but probably more a conversation of things outside the gym that you don't have to be doing as well. But we get that in
Yeah.
another episode. Um,
On pre-exhaust, to wrap that up, like, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with doing the leg extension before your squats or before your leg press, and I don't think there's anything wrong with doing tricep pushdowns before your bench press. But I think your motivation has to be, what are my training goals? And if you're prioritizing something specific at the moment, if it's quad growth, then by all means go and absolutely torch them on the leg extension. But your motivation should be, I am the freshest at the start of my session. I want to get the most out of my isolation movement for my quads. I'm going to go and put leg extension first, but do it appropriately. Train hard enough, take enough rest, take a little bit of rest before you go and do your squats or your leg press, and attack that as well. The load should still be enormous.
right, next one, forced reps.
I've done plenty of these. I'm going to start with a positive. It's super fun to make someone else do forced reps. Like, on the odd occasion, I have used them with clients as well. Like, and that's going to sound stupid in a minute because we're going to shit all over them, I imagine. But they're fun. Like, I used to enjoy doing them with my friends when I started training, and it's always bicep curls. Again, I I'm not someone who's trained like biceps a lot. You can probably tell, but I talk about biceps a lot. It's weird.
Just an
Uh,
exercise everyone can relate to.
yeah, standing in front of your mate while he's just done 12. easy bar, bicep curls, and he's gone, I'm done. And you go, you're not done, mate. No, you're not. You got more. There's like lots of videos, isn't there, of Tom Platz? You know Tom
Yeah,
Platz? Is he the quad father?
yeah.
Just forcing people. Like he looks like the worst coach in the world. He's just forcing people to do reps. And every video I've seen of him coaching is like on the hack squat or something. And he's like, do another rep. You got 10 more. And then they do 10 more. And he goes, five more. Like, holy shit, this guy is a psychopath. But when you got your friend in front of you and you can make him do a few more reps, basically a forced rep is they'll get to failure. They won't be able to do another concentric from the bottom. You help them up a little bit, give them a little bit of pressure on the bottom of the bar, help them to the top, and then they'll control it all the way down. And then you help them a little bit more because they'll be even tireder, and you just kind of keep going until they really do quit or their arms fall off.
So is what I did to Big G then just a forced rep?
So what Knuckles is referring to is one of the most controversial moments in kind of our friendship that we have with another chap who I think we'll get on at some point. Graham, if you're watching. What you did was botch your job as a spotter, which is don't touch the bar unless the bar's going down. It was going up, and you touched the bar on a bench press and basically stole a PR from him. So no,
I
that's
mean,
not a forced rep.
with the forced rep, I reckon he could have gone for a second.
Yeah,
And I would have just
that's
been there
probably true.
screaming, all you, bro, all you.
All you, bro. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't do that, guys. He he ruined. He still talks about it. That was
Oh,
years
he's
ago.
fuming. He'll never forgive me for that.
Mm, quite rightly. And no, that's not a forced rep.
So where are you putting forced reps?
They're in the bin. I'm afraid. From a technical perspective, they're in the bin. But I like, and this probably applies to all of these things. Like training should be fun, and if you enjoy that, and if you enjoy subjecting your training buddies to forced reps, then go ahead. Please do it. However, again, a little bit like we said with drop sets, if you see someone doing forced reps in the gym, you can almost guarantee that their goal is muscle growth. And if their goal is muscle growth, they're not going to get anything out of forced reps because the difference between ending a set with 2 or 3 reps in reserve and actually taking it to failure in terms of how much muscle growth will you get from that set is zero. There's plenty of research to demonstrate that. So going beyond failure, what you're adding is fatigue, and it's stuff to recover from. You have to recover from every single rep that you do in the gym. Yeah, it's not going to add any benefit. So just end your set.
Yeah, I think usually you'd find that it's people who still have this idea that you need to be training to failure because we talked about how some people find it difficult to know how hard to train, whereas some people train too far from failure, or some people just keep pushing themselves to failure. So it's being able to find that middle ground.
Yeah.
Right, so it's gone in the bin. So here's one that probably won't go in the bin, just to change, just for a change of pace. Cluster sets. What are they, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, spoiler alert, I love cluster sets. I think they're fantastic. A cluster set is a normal set of training where you will take a little bit of rest in the middle of it. So I use these quite regularly for things like pull ups, where I'd have a client who's been working towards getting their first pull up for quite some time. And then once you've got it, the obvious next step is to get multiple pull ups in a single set. I find cluster sets quite useful. Basically, how you'd approach that in the context of doing a set of pull ups is you would get up onto the pull up bar. You would do, let's say you just got your first rep. So you can do one. You would do 1 rep, you would come down off the bar, you would take 10 to 15 seconds of rest, and then you would go and do another rep. So technically, you've done 2 reps in that set. You've just used that little buffer of rest to recover enough to get the second one. And then you would take your rest and you'd go into set 2 and do the same thing. If you were trying to get from 2 pull up reps in a set to 3 and 4, then you might do a cluster set of 2 reps, take 10 to 15 seconds of rest, another set of 2, 1 or 2. So yeah, they're really useful. And I think if you're using super low reps of something, they're a great way to add a little bit of volume when you want it into a set.
Yeah, I think it allows you to still use a heavier load and then get like a fair bit of volume in terms of number of reps, just because it gives you
Yeah.
that rest between whether it's like you said singles or even doing doubles or triples and then rest for 15 to 20 seconds and go back into it. I know cluster sets is quite popular with the VBT crowd, so the velocity based training crowd, because like to end a set based on the velocity drop off. So for those who don't know, velocity based training is where there's an attachment to the bar which tells you the speed of every rep, and then from the start of the set to the end of the set, they measure the drop off in the speed of the bar, and there's a particular threshold that they use where they say the set should be terminated. So with clusters, they use the same principle where so it's a little more the breakups or the clusters a little more informed because you're getting instant feedback. So as soon as the threshold velocity drops below a certain percentage, they'll tell you to rack it, wait 15, 20 seconds, and then go again. So I think implementation using BBT is maybe a little more accurate because you're getting live feedback and implementing it. But in general, it does work. Even if you just break a set of, say,
Yeah.
8 reps into 2 sets of 4 or two triples and a double, yeah, it works.
So with velocity based training, they haven't like predetermined when when they'll break the setup. It's just when the computer tells you to. But I guess it's still somewhat arbitrary, like unless there's a huge amount of science behind that threshold drop off you talked about. I don't know much about VBT. I'm honestly
I mean, that
slightly against using it because I just don't want that much more tech.
yeah, like I think it's cool. Is it something you absolutely need? Probably not. But it is quite a cool development that we have. For me, the problem is, sometimes where on one rep the technique is just off and the bar just moves really slow,
Yeah,
but then on the
yeah,
next
yeah,
rep
yeah.
you recover and the bar flies up. So those are times where maybe I would say I would have rather stuck with the individual subjective perception rather than the
Hmm.
machine telling me.
Perhaps they have a way of mitigating that. They could like manually override.
Yeah, I mean,
Just go, no,
they
that
just use
wasn't.
coach's eye and see that it wasn't actually the bar speed
Yeah,
that dropped. It just what's the term? Got loose on the track, energy leakage and all that.
got loose. Yeah, I think the technical term actually is misgrooved.
Misgrooved.
Yeah, you've heard that.
I've heard wedge.
Misgrooved
Wedge is
that rep.
also a term I've heard recently. Yeah,
Wedged.
like you weren't
Never heard of
wedged
that.
properly. Cool. So we
Oh,
like we
okay,
like we like cluster sets.
love them.
Cool. So
Would you ever use them for higher rep stuff? Obviously, we mentioned the low rep, high loads, getting a little bit of extra volume into a set if you wanted it. I don't actually. Would you reclassify it as rest pause
I've
if you were
I've
doing a
always
higher rep
thought the
set?
terms are just used interchangeably, cluster and rest pause.
Interchangeable
Yeah,
could be.
yeah,
Yeah,
because that's basically what you're doing. The cluster is where you rest and pause and then you go again. I don't think I would use it
yeah.
for lighter loads, just because I think
I wonder if because if you I don't know if you're doing higher rep sets, you can probably bet that you're after a little bit of muscle growth because the load is lower, and if the load is lower, you're probably not after strength gains. And if the proxy for how much hypertrophy you're going to get from a set is how close are you to failure, why would you why would you stop a set and then restart it? You might as well just take it close to failure.
so. You
Is
probably
that sound logic?
yeah. I was going to say like could probably cut the next bit out if you don't talk about research, but I know there's a paper that looked at using heavier loads and training like a couple of reps away from failure and using lighter loads and similar pattern where they train a little away from failure to failure, light loads a little away from failure to failure. If you're using lighter loads, you need to get closer to failure or to failure to drive hypertrophy. So I think clusters would then be the opposite of what we want to do. If we're trying to use a lighter load and we're trying to get
Yeah,
to failure, don't break your setup, go to failure
yeah.
and
It's just going to make it harder to get
Yeah,
there.
and then like these days, like
You need to do more reps to achieve the same thing.
exactly, and then these days we tend to qualify like volume for hypertrophy as sets to failure or close to failure. So just do a
Yeah.
straight set and then take it to failure if you're using a light load.
Oh, spoilers. Straight sets are coming up, mate. Supersets.
Yeah, so we had a little chat about this for supersets just a little while back. Only because to me, I know there's like loads of technical variations of it where superset can be where you work two opposing muscle groups, where you work the same muscle group, or you're even just working two muscle groups that aren't involved in the other movement. But whenever I've prescribed a superset, it's basically where I feel like a second movement is just something that's going to allow them to rest after the first one and not take away from it when they go back. And I just tell them do it as a superset. So do one set of the first exercise, have a breather, do a second set of the one set of the second exercise, and then just rest enough to go back to the first one and do it all over again.
Yeah, exactly. And there are, I think, lots of different classifications of superset, but I think the only two that matter for me are number one, a compound superset, which is where you would run. So you got exercise A, exercise B. They both work the same muscle group or or very similar movement patterns, um, which I don't like too much. My bias will always be maximizing performance on whatever exercise you're doing at a given time. So to like tire yourself out and then go into a second movement doing kind of the same thing uh, doesn't fly with me. It's a little bit like what we were saying with the pre-exhaust section. And then the only other kind of superset that I think matters, I think you can just group them all and classify it as non-competing, which is the opposite. You would train exercise A, which could be anything, and then exercise B, which would just train something different. So like, it could be a lower body movement with an upper body movement. It could be a push with a pull. Yeah, whatever. And I really like that stuff because it's so time efficient. It saves people a ton of time, and when it's non-competing, you can be pretty sure that you'll perform, almost at 100% for that second exercise because nothing nothing local is tired. You've still done work, so there will be like a degree of fatigue, but it doesn't affect you that much. It's almost worth sacrificing that couple of percent for the time you save by running two exercises back to back. Having said that, what I really love doing is alternating sets, and the only difference there is you would insert rest between exercise A and exercise B. So you might do a set of bench press and then take 90 seconds of rest, and then you would do a set of dumbbell rows or whatever, and then you would take further rest before you went back to part A. And I like that a lot. It's a little bit less time efficient, but with that little bit of rest, you're kind of guaranteeing that you've recovered a bit more and you can absolutely maximize part B as well as part A.
You recently posted a reel where you gave an example of what your sessions look like these days. Was it a 45-minute session where you went through three different
Oh yeah,
alternating sets?
yeah,
So what were the
that's right. Yeah. So,
exercises?
oh mate, come on, what did I do that
I know
day?
you benched. Was it a bench and a deadlift?
I benched. Oh yeah, it was a deadlift. Deadlift was number one, and I would take I. So the rest there was like 2 to 3 minutes between deadlift and bench press because they're both like big movements, and like historically I wouldn't have programmed that. I probably still wouldn't program it for like many people, but I played around with it and I was really surprised with how much I could get out my bench press. It didn't feel like I struggled at all. It didn't feel like my performance took a hit. And I trained that way for the last 4 to 6 months of last year, and I set a massive bench PR at the end of the year. So I can't argue with how that went. But yeah, deadlifts and bench press.
Just quickly there.
There was some other funny stuff I can't remember.
And how far away from fail? How many reps in reserve were you working at?
2 to 3. Yeah, and I generally prescribe myself 2 to 3 on most stuff, and then I just kind of like auto regulate around that. So if I am feeling especially good, and I feel like I'm recovering quite well recently, and there's nothing hectic going on in my life, and I'll justify like pushing to the absolute limit just because it's fun. Yeah, not really because I'll get more out of it, but for my ego, nice bit of entertainment for myself, keep me engaged. But yeah, 2 to 3.
Nice. Cool. So we like supersets as well. So far we've liked cluster sets, we've liked supersets, a couple of others that so one more I know you will definitely like. But before we get to that, what are your thoughts on group classes? I know we've run our fair share of group classes and things like that. So what are your thoughts around what you typically tend to see?
Well, I make money coaching people who train in the gym on their own, so I hate them. But group fitness classes, I like. I'll probably feel a little bit guilty about my take on this one because they're super accessible. There's big pros. They're very accessible. People generally aren't like the standard person who doesn't lift weights isn't that confident going into the gym and lifting weights. They don't feel like they know what to do. So it's easy to go into a class, and I think that's a very good thing. It's accessible. The bar is super low. Yeah, you can just go in and not think and do it. And I will always back the fact that doing something, however ineffective it is better than staying at home and watching Corrie again. I don't even know if Corrie's still running. I don't like him much. I think we look at everything from a lens of not what's optimal, but like we want something out of our training, right? The only reason we're lifting weights is to drive some kind of meaningful adaptation because the human body's amazing at it, at adapting to stress. So all we're doing in the gym is applying a stress in like a measured way to get an adaptation that we want. And that adaptation always, like for us, it has to align with what are our goals? What do we want to do with our bodies in the future? What do we, I suppose, look like for some people? What do they want it to look like? We can really measure it and apply it like scientifically. You can't do that in a class.
Um,
It's do you want to say some words on it because I'll probably end up talking for half an hour and
so for me, the answer is
we're only a we're only a hair breadth from shitting on CrossFit or something.
so I was going to say like most of my stuff, the answer is going to be depends. It's going to come down to who's running a class and how they run it. Because for me, having come from the S&C background of working with teams, it's just the same approach I then took into the group classes that I used to coach at the compound, which is where um, you have an intended outcome for the session and you have a skeletal plan, and then you make tweaks here and there for the individuals on your classes. But then that would only work because I would set the cap on my class to a maximum of 8 to 10, because
Yeah.
then I can coach that many athletes. I can make changes, I can keep an eye on them. And also, it's just easy for me. I've been weird like that, where I can remember what someone was doing, like even though I was running several other classes. Or I would also give them the task of tracking their own weights and how the session felt and things like that. So it's something we touched upon the first episode, where I said I don't know why there's a disconnect between what gets done in S&C and what gets done in personal training. Because S&C for team sports works well. They're working with massive groups of players coming into a gym setting. So I don't understand why those same principles just can't be applied to a group class. Because if you do that, a group class is great. One, you just
Well, I think
yeah,
it's because it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to do, and for sports teams, they're obviously incentivized to do it right and pay the right individuals to plan and run those sort of things because they get performance out of their players and they get reduced rates of injury and things like that, and that translates as money. But for gyms, it's way more about what is the margin. Like to hire someone incredibly skilled, probably from the world of S&C, and bring them in and run uh, boot camp would be an overspend. So you get personal trainers to do it on shift between toilet cleaning stints.
yeah. I mean, but the thing is, like, I'd say it comes down to the coach. You want to take pride in your work, take pride in the work you do.
I agree.
So I don't think I would necessarily agree that the pay that you're getting should take away from the quality of product that you're delivering to the individuals. But then again, like the question is, do you even buy into it? Because I'll give you a perfect example of when I used to swap or half-ass it. Because the first gym we started working at, I was asked on a shift to run a spin class, and I said no because one, people are going to judge me for this now. Is I didn't have Spotify, so I was supposed to make a playlist and run a spin class, and I said I don't have
Great
Spotify. I
excuse.
don't have a Spotify playlist. I don't have these things, and I don't believe in spin. So I said I'll run a conditioning class where the session will be based on eliciting specific adaptations, but I won't run a spin class where I tell people, okay, so now we're cycling uphill and then I change the music, and then now we're cycling downhill and I change the music. I'm not going to do that shit. So
Yeah.
again, I didn't buy into it. So even if I did run it, it would be such a shocking class. It would be so bad.
You didn't run it in the end?
Now, the one time they said I absolutely have to, I just said I wasn't feeling well. And then they finally realized I
Good.
was just never going to do it. It wasn't long after then that I just
Yeah.
left the gym.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, so group
Yeah.
classes is that I think coaches just take pride in the work and then put in the effort to thinking about an intended outcome and then delivering a session and
I,
making individual tweaks. Because if you do that, I think group classes work.
yeah. I agree with that, but I don't think that PTs in commercial gyms and spaces like that have the artistic license to do that. Like they might be able to put on their own class and brand it up if they're lucky. But most of the time, the gym will plan. I suppose that they will at least brand the class up, and they'll be like, yeah, it's spin or it's some of those Les Mills ones. I can't remember what they're called. Body pump,
So legs, bums,
legs,
tums.
bums and tums. That sort of stuff. It'll be this is what the class is, and that's kind of what sells it
I think
to members. Is it's an established
it's
thing, and
also
it must be effective.
when you talk to some people and you ask them what they want out of a class, like they want to be made to feel like they absolutely worked hard. They want to feel ruined at the end of it. But
Yeah,
this thing of like, I want
yeah,
absolute fatigue. Like, I want to be rolling on the floor in pain in a pool of sweat and just struggling to breathe. There was a meme
yeah.
you sent me.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness
what
me!
was the?
I've got it. We got to shout this guy out. I've got it here somewhere.
I think we should throw that up on the screen here, which is like very accurate. But it's like
This guy,
stations and
he's honestly hilarious. He follows me. I don't know if he knows who I am. Clintonius. He should have way more followers because it's so funny. Yeah, he put up a couple of memes about group fitness. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. One
really
of those. You'll have seen that before. I'll throw it up on the screen. You receive group fitness, and you also receive an atom bomb of directionless fatigue, and it's on the nose. That's exactly
absolutely.
what you get. We're talking about meaningful adaptation. What's he said there? No measurable adaptations. Because what are you really working on? I think the people who go to these classes, that is what they want. They want I want to get my heart rate up a bit, or I want to sweat, and I want to feel like I've worked hard. And you do get those things. And if you're starting from a place of non-fitness, or you're completely untrained, and you go into a class and you start to lift light weights, or I don't know, do lots of star jumps, you will get a little bit fitter, and you'll get a little bit stronger if you're lifting those little dumbbells or those plastic barbells. But you'll very quickly come up on your like cap. And again, it's still good. It's great to move. Like it's so much better than not moving. Like if this is you, please keep doing it. Or progress into doing it properly, preferably. But yeah, the thing it's missing is progressive overload and scalability and making it harder over time. And the thing it's got too much of is this. What does he say?
Yeah,
Directionless fatigue. You're just piling on fatigue, and it comes back to what we were saying a little bit earlier about um, being able to recover from stuff. Like you should be doing really productive things and almost as little as possible of that stuff to get an adaptation, and then just stop. Go and get on with the rest of your life. Go and eat some good food, get some good sleep, and spend some time with your family. End of
Yeah.
story. You don't need to be doing drop sets and until your arms fall off, and you don't really need to be going to a class where they're going to absolutely drill you into the ground. He gave some examples. I'll flash up another one and I don't know why this made me laugh so much, this slide, but it's just a workout example, and this, I know the comedian in the background, he's hilarious. The 55 snatches, 55 burpees. This is not now group fitness. It's CrossFit, isn't it? But yeah, what is the adaptation that you're trying to get out of that workout?
So no one goes after Tom. He doesn't actually mean that it's CrossFit, CrossFit. A lot of times it's people who misunderstand like principles of what CrossFit programming is like and just say,
Yeah,
oh,
call it a WOD.
yeah, they call it a ward and they just say, let's just throw like 5 different movements, get 100 reps, and let's call it a ward and let's leave like everybody absolutely fucked. So it's not us taking a dig at CrossFit, so calm down.
Yeah, so CrossFit lawyers, it's
Are you even
okay.
allowed to say the word? I feel like everything is patented and copyrighted and you can't say that these days.
Well, I think I can say the word.
Okay, so before we
I'm the level
before we
level, or I was level one.
before we carry on, oh, you did have your level one. I completely forgot about that.
I did. It was the most expensive T-shirt I ever bought in my life.
Right, we move on from group classes. Maybe something to finish on, which is finishers. What is a finisher, Tom?
Yeah. What is a finisher? I suppose you get to the end of your workout, you've done all of your productive stuff, and you feel like you've got a little bit of energy to burn. You will do a little finisher to air quotes finish you off and just completely exhaust you. So it could be that you've done, I don't know, an arm workout and you think, okay, my arms have still got a little bit of juice left. I'm going to do 100 curls and 100 push-ups just to really fry them. But I think people apply it to fitness as well, don't they? Like they might slap on like the WODs we just spoke about. If they've just completed a strength workout, they might go and do 500,000 box jumps with 500,000 clean and jerks or something like that. So yeah, it's something to empty the tank. And I, other than that, I can't tell you what the benefit of doing that would be.
Like to me, it makes no sense. If you had a specific session, which I'm hoping that your coach has prescribed it with an intended outcome in mind. You worked the prescribed intensity and you're done with the session, you worked hard enough, you did everything that you had to, and you still have a little bit of energy. It's fine. Go home. You did what you need to do. It's not about doing as much as possible, it's about doing as little as possible to get the maximum benefit, and that's it.
I'm getting a bit bored of our message now because it seems to be the same thing on almost every advanced training method. Is like they're either trying to reduce the load you're lifting or they're trying to absolutely smash up the volume for no reason and give you an insurmountable amount of recovery work to
Yeah,
do.
it's
And
more,
it's no different with
yeah,
finishers.
it's exactly this. It's what you said is drop the load is one. And then most of these seem to be about rather than getting or trying to elicit improved adaptations or larger magnitude of adaptation seems to be about trying to accumulate as much fatigue as possible with the notion that we're training really hard.
Yeah, yeah. To feel like you,
Yeah,
I suppose that like there's probably value in it, isn't there? Like we're not saying it's 100% all bad, and I'd be lying if I said that sometimes I didn't get to the end of the workout and I tagged on a couple of sets of tricep extensions. Like I do that, but I think I do also admit to myself that it's for my brain more than anything else. Like it's nice to feel productive, but there's a limit to how much of that stuff you should be doing. If you're doing it all the time on every workout and you're training 4 or 5 times a week, that added amount of work that you have to recover from is absolutely massive. And the recovery side of things is so important. We'll do a full episode on it at some point. Yeah, you got to be recovering from this stuff. So we call it, I can't believe we haven't used the term yet this episode, but junk volume. I use it all the time when I'm talking to clients. It's junk volume is extra work in the gym that just isn't productive and you don't need it. There's no reason to do it other than doing it. And like I said, sometimes it's fun, but you shouldn't just be slapping tons and tons of junk volume into your training for no reason.
Yeah, I think it's good to make it clear that we're not saying something is right or something is wrong. We've tried it, we've looked at the research, and then we're weighing out whether it's worth it or not. Every now and then, go for it. But for something to be a staple in your program, the returns you get from it just aren't really worth it, if any at all.
Which should bring us on to our final advanced training technique, which I've written on the list with like love hearts all around it. It's just straight sets. Just do your normal sets. Like they're the ones that we started doing first in like when weights were just invented. 3 sets of whatever or 2 sets of whatever, it doesn't matter. Just do normal sets of training. If your goal is strength, make them really heavy in the context of what's really heavy for you. And if your goal is muscle growth, then make them quite close to failure.
Yeah.
Take enough rest, do another one.
So,
I don't think we can.
yeah,
I don't think we can put it
it's that simple.
any more simple
It's
than that.
something that's been tried and tested over years and years. It's simple, it's effective, and then you don't have to overthink anything.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the argument with using some of the advanced techniques that we talked about today would be like you're adding percents, and it's all about getting as close to this kind of 100% perfection that we can get to. Keep adding those percents, 1% a day, people say, don't they? I think our argument is you're not adding percents. You're probably removing percents by doing them. So yeah, straight sets, absolutely. Can I do it?
Is it not killing you? It.
Yeah, it's worked. I can't believe
Oh,
it.
jeez. Right. Should we end it on that note then, with the hearts
I think
and
we'll wrap up before you talk about any more research.
I, I
Yeah,
behaved today.
guys, thank you for listening to our absolute ramble on advanced training methods or otherwise. We will catch you on the next one.
Good chat.
Good chat.